In Amazon's Fallout TV show, there featured a trio of vaults that shared an experiment, Vaults 31, 32, and 33. All connected but isolated from each other, occasionally trading goods as well as inhabitants. On the surface, the vault appeared to operate as a democracy, with an elected overseer and council focusing on preparing its dwellers for Reclamation Day, when they would emerge from the vault and restart civilization. However, as the show progresses, we find out that the vaults have a much more sinister experiment, hidden beneath the facade of a cheerful underground society. In the year 2077, we discover through watching the character of Cooper Howard that Vault-Tec wanted to wipe the slate clean and exterminate the population in order to create a new society from the ashes of the old, using the vaults as a means to do so. Amidst the hundreds of vaults created, Vaults 31, 32, and 33 would be the love child of a Vault-Tec employee named Bud Askins. Bud was the mastermind behind these three vaults, and he was of the belief that effective management was the key to progressing society forward. You see, by 2077, nuclear war was inevitable, and in his eyes, the future of humanity hinged upon the preservation of Vault-Tec's influence, rather than attempting to preserve the United States, which he considered a failed nation. But his plan had a major flaw. An experiment such as the vaults could last for centuries, and Vault-Tec employees would not live long enough to be able to sustain it. Understanding that keeping Vault-Tec around for the long haul was crucial, Bud came up with the Future Assistant Training Program, in which he would train a select group of employees he called Bud's Buds to excel in managing a population. These select few, including figures like Betty Pearson, Overseer Maclean, and Stephanie Harper, were trained to carry on Vault-Tec's mission for centuries into the future. They'd achieve this by cryogenically freezing Bud's Buds within Vault 31 and thawing them out periodically across the centuries to supervise and lead the ordinary residents of Vaults 32 and 33. The inhabitants of these two vaults would be used as breeding stock for the Vault-Tec managers, aiming to produce offspring with the managerial traits of Vault-Tec employees. This was just one of many experiments conducted inside the vaults scattered throughout the country. And the only way that Vault-Tec could ensure the success of these vaults was for them to drop the bombs themselves in order to wipe the slate clean and exterminate the population. When the bombs fell on October 23, 2077, the three vaults were sealed, thus beginning the experiment. Bud Askins, in an effort to preserve himself, would put his brain inside of a Roomba, and over the centuries he periodically integrated his Vault 31 managers into Vaults 32 and 33. As time went on, the experiment of the Vault Trio was working as planned, only encountering the occasional technical issues which would be swiftly handled by the managers of Vault 31 when needed, making sure the experiment endured for nearly 220 years. Over the years, the managers of Vault 31 implemented manipulation strategies to maintain control over the populations of Vaults 32 and 33. They would engineer crisis situations to sway the favor of inhabitants by employing the slogan, "When things look glum, vote for someone from Vault 31," as a tactic to secure votes in their favor. In the year 2271, Hank Maclean, a former inhabitant of Vault 31, assumed the role of overseer of Vault 33. And prior to his election, a weevil famine would occur inside the vaults, which was most likely orchestrated by Vault-Tec in order to get Hank selected as overseer. Fast forward to around 2277, Hank's wife, Rose Maclean, deduced that civilization had returned on the surface based on an imbalance in the vault's water supply. Her husband, now the overseer, dismissed the idea and instructed her to stay silent about it. Rose realized that he was hiding something, and she fled the vault with her children, Norm and Lucy. Hank, as the overseer, could not let this information come out, and so he would engineer a cover-up to hide it from the population of Vault 33. This cover-up was likely the Great Plague of 2277 mentioned in the show, which employed a strict quarantine procedure which allowed Hank to leave Vault 33 unnoticed and give pursuit. He would find Rose in the city of Shady Sands, the capital of the New California Republic, where the survivors of the surface had built a sanctuary above ground. When he confronted her, Rose refused to leave, and so Hank would take his children and return to the vault, but not before setting off a nuclear strike upon Shady Sands with his wife still inside, viewing it as an obstacle to establishing a future governed by Vault-Tec. Which, might I add, is rather ironic because Shady Sands was established from the remnants of Vault 15. Oh well. After obliterating the capital of the NCR and his wife, Hank returned to Vault 33 with his children and blamed her death on the plague. All was peaceful in the vaults once more, until 2294 when the people of Vault 32 somehow discovered they were nothing but guinea pigs for Vault 31's twisted experiment. It's not clear how the dwellers learned of this secret, but the revelation triggered widespread chaos across the vault, resulting in numerous casualties from violence as well as self-inflicted harm. In addition, we can see that their overseer, a man named Ian Jackson, was tortured to death, while his staff was lynched by a mob of angry dwellers. The anti-management faction appears to have finished off their managers before attempting to break into Vault 31. However, their rebellion ultimately failed, as several dwellers can be seen perished at the Vault 31 entrance. Afterwards, in an attempt to cover up the incident, Bud Askins would restrict communications between Vault 33 and 32, and neglected to inform the Overseer of Vault 33 of what happened beyond noting of Overseer Jackson's passing. 2 years would pass, and Vault 32 would be infiltrated by Lee Moldaver, the leader of the NCR Remnants. A friend of Rose Maclean before the destruction of Shady Sands, Moldaver, in addition to getting revenge against Hank Maclean, also needed to acquire his Vault-Tec credentials in order to activate the cold fusion reactors seen in the last episode of the show. Moldaver and her group would infiltrate Vault 32 using Rose Maclean's Pip-Boy, posing as the Vault's residents during the triennial trade between Vault 32 and Vault 33, in which the Overseer's daughter Lucy was set to get married. They would then massacre the Vault's residents in order to kidnap Hank, a goal which they successfully achieved in the premiere episode of the series. With a dwindling population after the massacre and 16 violent NCR remnants confined to a repurposed reading room, the dwellers would convene in the atrium to determine their next steps. Against the orders of the council, Lucy would leave the vault in order to rescue her father. A follow-up vault meeting of the Vault 33 Council would be held in order to decide the fate of the prisoners. Given the residents' long isolation and idealistic culture, there was serious consideration of rehabilitating and integrating the prisoners into Vault society to compensate for their reduced population. However, Lucy's brother, Norman, would propose execution of the prisoners, which was quickly shot down by Betty Pearson, a council member from Vault 31. The conversation then shifted to a broken water chip, which left the vault with only 2 months of water reserves. This was probably another tactic orchestrated by Vault-Tec to ensure the election of yet another overseer from Vault 31. And it worked, as the saying, "When things look glum, vote for someone from Vault 31, led to Betty's victory as the new overseer. Prior to this, Norm, who was assigned to feeding the NCR prisoners, was troubled when one of them revealed that the residents of Vault 32 were dead before they even got there. Norm would then go with his cousin Chet to investigate Vault 32, and they would then discover evidence of the brutal revolt that had taken place inside. Norm also uncovered that access to Vault 32 was granted from the outside using Rose Maclean's Pip-Boy, making him even more suspicious of Vault-Tec and the Overseers. After Betty was elected, Norm delved into the Vault archives, revealing a pattern that all Overseers since 2077 had been from Vault 31. Before he can investigate further, the NCR prisoners were found dead via poisoning, and Overseer Pearson announced plans to reassign half of Vault 33's population to Vault 32. Upon entry, we see that Vault 32 has been completely restored, erasing any traces of the revolt as if it had never occurred. And during the Vault split, when residents were being transferred to Vault 32, Norm would seize the opportunity to hack into the Overseer's terminal and contact Vault 31's Overseer posing as Betty. He proceeds to deceive the Overseer into opening the door, and upon entry he would encounter Bud Askins, now a brain on a Roomba, and stumble upon the cryogenically frozen Vault-Tec managers within Vault 31. It is then that Bud reveals to Norm the true purpose behind the 3 vaults. Bud then locks Norm inside the chamber, seeing him as a threat to the experiment. Bud tells Norm that if he doesn't want to starve to death, he needs to enter one of the sleeping chambers. And in our last shot of Norm, we see him hesitantly approaching the cryostasis pods, and whether he chooses to preserve himself or starve will remain a mystery until the release of Season 2. Stay tuned till next time where I'll cover the lore of Vault 4. Anyways, please like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on the Fallout show down in the comments.